Hey everyone, I want to revisit and talk a little bit more about step three. Some of you are still in the throes of getting that going, and so I was hoping that maybe by giving you this short video that I could answer some questions that you're having. Now you know you can always email me anytime, and if we need to talk by phone, we can do that as well. So let's just get started and look and see what I'm asking for in this part of the paper. Now we're really doing one big paper. So this time, will you, if you didn't before, many of you have done this, but if you didn't before, because I didn't ask for it, will you make this one long continuous paper where I can see your title page and then your step one introduction and then your step two literature review and then your step three. So it's all going to be one big paper with a running head so that your title is on every page and I'll always know what you are talking about. So where do I begin? Well, you begin in step one and then step two, and now we're following these steps. You are designing a research question. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that you need an umbrella. A big umbrella, and the research question is the umbrella, and the interview questions are the stripes in the umbrella, and every interview question points up to the top of the umbrella, which is the big research question. Every interview question must answer something that goes back to the research question. They have to be what I call bidirectional. The research question tells us what we're looking for. The interview questions tell us what we found. Okay, so then you're going to find 5 to 10 participants who may be program directors, children, parents, providers, teachers. That's on here. The more participants you find, the richer the data. But with this caveat, you don't want too many questions. I'm sorry, too many participants, because then that's too much data to analyze, to code and analyze and make assumptions about in this short semester. We don't have that many weeks left. So you don't want too many participants. But how do you know how many are enough? Well, it goes back to you don't want to get too many, you don't want to get too few, you want to get them just right. And you know that by the amount of data that you are collecting. You may have participants who have very short answers and they don't really give you a lot of data to code. So then you're going to want to add on more people. Say you had 5 that you started with, but then maybe 1 or 2 of them really didn't generate the data in the emailed interview questions that you needed. So then you're going to add a 6th, 7th, or 8th person. But I would do those one at a time. It's easier to do it that way than to have 10 people lined up and then, oh my goodness, you have so much data with 5 participants that you don't really need those other 5, and so it's kind of hard to turn them away and say, well, I really don't need you now, although they may be excited. I don't know. Okay, so let's keep going. So then you're going to create 5 to 10 interview questions, and again, those questions need to point back to that research question. I would say to start with 5 questions, and then you can always do prompts to get more answers for a question. For instance, if you sent out a question and it didn't, and you had a couple of participants that didn't really give us much of an answer to that question, then you may think, well, that's really not that great a question. Maybe it's in the way it was written, and you may want to add a couple more questions. So that's going to vary as well. But I would start with fewer, bigger questions than just 10 short questions. I say that because a lot of people are busy and they really don't want to take the time to answer questions. And if you had 5, it might be easier for them to get to those questions, to answer them for you and get them back to you. If you're having trouble getting responses, then just talk to me and I'll tell you some things we can do. And then you are going to do this amazing, wonderful part of the research, which is my favorite part. You're going to ask them the questions. Now, are you going to do it through email? Are you going to call them? Or is it safe for you to actually visit them? Because remember, safety first within this pandemic. I know things are loosening up, and I know that many of us have been vaccinated, but just in case, I want you to remember, I want you to stay safe first. So then you are going to transcribe the data. Now, if you send out the questionnaire or interview questions in an email, then the data is already transcribed, and that is a beautiful thing. But if you want to interview, you want to do that person-to-person thing, you're going to be taking notes, or you're going to get to your car and you're going to start recording what you heard in there as quickly as you can, because the farther you get away from sitting with your participant, the harder it is to remember what their answers were to the questions. I think note taking is the easiest. It just sort of prolongs the interview setting or the interview time. Okay, and then we're going to code the data. Now, let's keep going though. Designing that qualitative research question, I've given you some information there, some examples of the questions to generate the biggest possible answers, which is what we want. And then I talked a little bit about designing that quantitative research question. Now, you don't have to do both. No, no, no. That's called mixed methods or multiple methods approach. You don't have to do that. I just thought that some of you may be ending your program in your master's program. You may have had that research methods course. You may be very schooled in quantitative questioning, and you have a lot of participants to work with. But that's going to require a lot of participants, 25 and up, if you're going to do quantitative questions. I would prefer that you did qualitative questioning. Let me strike that. I would prefer you did what you're most comfortable with. I am most comfortable with qualitative, but if you are comfortable with quantitative questioning, please do that, and I will work with you. Let's just leave it at that. You just have to have more people because it generates a much smaller data set for you. Okay, and I gave you lots of information here on how to write those and what are some of the things that you'll need to consider. And then I gave you more information about participant selection and many of the things I just said as I was answering the things at the very first. And then how to create your interview questions. There's lots of information there. This is really just sort of go back and remind you that lots of information is here in case you haven't had a chance to look at it. And I think you might get a lot of answers here. I don't mind you asking me, but I may refer you back to here also. And then sample questions, samples, and then how to gather the data from your participants through observations and direct questionings. We said that. And then transcribing, I talked about that. Now let's talk about coding the data. Now I'm going to give you another video a little bit later on, maybe next week, on coding. I'm going to go full out into coding. And so don't worry about that right now. I really want you to worry about getting enough data to code and then analyze. So if you can just get that data, which is just like, those are gems, they're like diamonds to have that data, get that, and then we will give much more attention to how to code it. So again, don't worry about that right now. And so this is worth 50 points. Again, I know it should be worth 500. It seems like a lot of work, but it is really the icing on the cake. It's the most fun part of doing this project, I promise you. You will be so excited to get your first data. Now, if you need help in any way, email me, kpetty@twu.edu. And let me know a time that you need to talk to me and we can get together, or I will just answer you through email. But get me those interview questions ASAP so that I can give you my thoughts, and then we can get you going out in the field, either virtually or actually in the field. Okay, that's all for now.